What's up, everyone? Matt Gajewski here. Back again talking college football, and today we are previewing Oregon's roster. We are in the midst of the transfer portal. Oregon has not made a lot of moves this spring, so I think we have a pretty good idea of what we are going to see from this team. But getting a little more feedback on the videos, at least the first 6 or 7 we released. Thank you if you've given that. It actually helps a lot, and we'll take all that into account. And if you want to support in other ways, liking the video, subscribing, all that goes a long way. So thank you if you've done that. It's not lost on me that you're choosing to spend some of your time in April or May or whenever you're viewing this, watching a college football show well ahead of the season. But today we're going to break down Oregon's roster. We are going to start with a high-level overview of what happened last year, first and foremost, and then dive into the roster and what to expect from this year. So, Oregon, here are the efficiency metrics for this team. This is where they finished. Obviously, an amazing year for the Ducks in their first year in the Big Ten. They finished with a 13-1 season. That was year 3 for Dan Lanning. Now he enters year 4. They made the college football playoff. They won the Big Ten. They were the #1 overall seed, and they were undefeated until they ran up against Ohio State in the first round. And what a lot of people would argue is a flaw in the system, but largely, it's been an amazing tenure for Lanning since he took over. He is 35-6 overall, coming over to Oregon after he was the Georgia DC for 3 years prior to his coming over to the Ducks. Offensive coordinator Will Stein, he took over this job full-time in 2023. He was the previous offensive coordinator for UTSA's offense, and this has been one of the most efficient units in college football. You can see the only place they really lagged behind last year was their offensive line. 42nd in pass blocking, 33rd in run blocking, top 20 in almost every other major metric. They've been able to vary their offense, some games with high pass rates, some games below that, finish right on average at 63rd in pass rate. Seconds per play, not all that different. 67th there. And then on defense, they do return their defensive coordinator, Tosh Lupoi. He took over in 2022. Previously was in the NFL, and his defenses have been just as good. A lot of elite talent. The biggest thing with this Oregon team is the departures and some of the talent we are losing. So they've lost 4 offensive linemen, their quarterback, 2 of their top 3 receivers, Tez Johnson, Trayshawn Holden, 2 of their top tight ends, Terrence Ferguson and Pat Herbert, running back Jordan James. On defense, they lost their top 8 DBs. Lost 2 elite defensive tackles in Derek Harmon and Jamari Cardwell, an edge rusher in Jordan Birch, and the list goes on. So there's a lot to replace for this Oregon team, which brings me to recruiting, how they've been doing. And as you can see, this is a top 10 recruiting team basically since Dan Lanning took over. 2 top 5 classes the last 2 years. Good retention with these. In 2024, the 3rd-ranked class in the country and the 1st-ranked class in the Big Ten, they were returning 79%. 2023, I included where they were ranked in the Big Ten. Even though they finished 9th overall, and this was a Pac-12 season, they would have been 2nd in the Big Ten, 60% retention there. So that part is awesome for Oregon. They're also a good transfer team. This current class is 4th in the country. Last year's was 2nd. 2023's was 9th. So you've got 3 top 10 transfer classes as well for this team, putting the roster in a pretty good spot, but it's still a ton to turn over year over year. So I'll bring you behind the glass for our player data usage tool. This is a 2-deep depth chart for Oregon. Have these for all the teams. Basically what it is, you've got your snaps from the last 2 seasons. So how experienced are they? What recruit were they? That's in terms of stars. Then we have a player rating. It's under the value system. So that basically looks at your recruiting ranking, gives you a score, and then from there it takes playing time into consideration. So the more you've played, the less it relies on your recruiting ranking, giving you an overall score. Transfers are in yellow, injured players are in red. With Oregon, it's tough. There's not really that many major injuries in spring. A lot of guys were held out, so it's really tough to parse who has a real injury, who does not. But let's dive right into the roster. We lose Dillon Gabriel, and now moving forward with Dante Moore. So they tried to get ahead of this last year. It's a big player to replace. Dillon Gabriel was the 17th most efficient quarterback in college football last year. And Dante Moore has all the tools. He's just unproven. So he comes over last year. He was originally a 2023 5-star. UCLA threw him to the fire right away. In that season, 2023, he had a 55% completion percentage, 7.5 yards per attempt, 11 touchdowns, 9 interceptions, 14 big-time throws, 12 turnover-worthy plays, took a lot of sacks, negative 78 rushing yards. He's a big quarterback, 6'3", 210, but all this requires context. I mean, after that season, UCLA had to change their coaching staff. They went to Eric Bieniemy at OC. Like, it was a complete disaster. He's already been fired. So the decision to seek out development over immediate playing time hopefully has benefited Dante Moore as he had a year to learn behind Dillon Gabriel in a phenomenal offensive environment, which is now known for cultivating QBs, and a few of them some reclamation projects, including Bo Nix. Good depth here behind him. Pair of 4-stars. Austin Novosad came in 2023. Achilles Smith Jr. is an incoming 4-star, and this kid looks like an alien at QB. He's a 6'5" dual threat. So the QB position is in a good spot overall, considering they've now lost 2 quarterbacks to the NFL. But skill positions, a few more questions here. Running back. They lose Jordan James, but they go out and add, I personally think, the best running back in the portal in Mekhi Hughes. He's 5'11", 210 pounds, started the last 2 years for Tulane, 2,779 rushing yards, over 5.3 yards per carry, caught 30 passes. Last year, 1,018 of his 1,403 yards came after contact. Yes, that's 1,018 yards after contact. Forced 129 missed tackles the last 2 years. I think, honestly, there's an untapped ceiling with the pass catching because Tulane is not a school that throws a ton to their running back, and they rotate other backs on for third down just to keep guys like Mekhi Hughes fresh. Awesome place to start. They returned Noah Whittington, the former Western Kentucky product. He's more of your scat back, pass catching back, third down back, whatever you want to call it. 5'8", 200 pounds. He caught 24 passes, but largely inefficient as a runner. 540 yards, only 4.6 yards per carry. It's not woefully inefficient. It's just, it was behind Jordan James. It probably will be behind Mekhi Hughes this year. He'll be out there for some third downs. They have good depth. Former 4-star Jaden Lamar's played at least 50 snaps the last 2 years. Dewan Riggs has seen a few snaps. They have a pair of incoming 4-stars in Dariar Hill and Jordan Davidson. So that's worth mentioning. The running back position's in a pretty good spot. Wide receiver, I have a few more questions. They lose Trayshawn Holden and Tez Johnson. That leaves former 5-star Texas A&M transfer Evan Stewart atop the depth chart. I was a little disappointed in him last year. He's 6 feet, 175, so not the biggest guy, but only 48 catches for 613 yards. Just had higher expectations for the former 5-star. He's playing out wide 82% of the time. 1.57 yards per route is pretty middling for him, so just not sure that we got the full ceiling from Evan Stewart. But behind him, I'm just not really sure what else we can rely on. They forced Justice Lowe into 398 snaps last year. He had 21 catches for 203 yards. 45% of that playing time came in the slot. He's 6'1", 185 pounds. He's a 3-star, and I think it showed when you look at his production. 47th percentile production last year. That's just not good enough for me. And it leads me to the question of, why is Justice Lowe playing over some of your highly recruited 4 and 5 stars? I just don't have the answer. And Justice Lowe, for reference, was a 4-star by some recruiting services. He was a 3-star consensus. So if you have qualms with the consensus ranking and you have your allegiances to a particular ranking service, I get it. He was on the fringe 3-4 star. But what I'm trying to say is he's behind a lot of the players we're going to talk about in just a second here. But he's the second most experienced guy. Unless you want to go back to about 2023 and talk about Gary Bryant Jr., the USC transfer. He was injured basically the entire season last year. In 2023, he caught 30 balls for 442 yards. Perimeter receiver, 75% of his snaps came out wide. He's 5'11", 185 pounds. Also inefficient, 1.46 yards per route. All these players have been behind better players that are now in the NFL, so perhaps they can emerge, but it's not the best place to start. for Oregon. And then they had their top recruit from last year's class, Gatlin Bear, take a mission trip. So now where do we turn for depth? There's a lot of 4-stars. Jeremiah McClellan, Jurian Dickey, Dylan Gresham, Kyler Casper. They've all played a few snaps. Dickey and Casper have dealt with injuries, but this group is still basically a black box. They have not been able to get on the field. Generally speaking, as long as these kids are still in their first or second years with the program, I'll fall back on the recruiting ranking. You just rarely get a lot of talent like this in the program. And fortunately for Oregon, you don't need to rely on these players necessarily. Perhaps the true ceiling is unlocked with your 5-star freshman, Decorian Moore. They have a lot of other players on the roster as well that maybe could take some steps. They added Malik Benson, who's not really all that flashy. The Florida State, Alabama, and JUCO transfer has been now at 4 schools in 4 years. Originally, he was a 4-star coming out of JUCO, which is probably just a miss by the recruiting services. His production with Alabama in 2023 was in the 41st percentile. Then he jumped to the 48th percentile last year. He's not a player you want on the field if you actually have aspirations to win anything. Yeah, he can probably fill in for some snaps here and there, similar to what Lowe did last year. But if he's a player that actually needs to play for you in a large role, we've seen it 2 years in a row. He can't be on the field all the snaps, and he's not a producer. So that leads to another question. I'm just not sure how the receiving room comes together. There is the talent for this to be an elite unit. It's just largely unproven outside of, I think, Evan Stewart. Every single other player at least has one question, and a lot of these guys have more than one. Tight end, they lose Terrence Ferguson, but they bring back former 4-star Kenyon Sadiq. He's a weird player for the tight end position. He's more of a receiver. Only 36% of his snaps came in line, but what an explosive freak. 6'3", 245, caught 25 of 27 targets for 307 yards, 2.1 yards per out. That's the best among any returning pass catcher on the team. Posted solid blocking marks too, even though he wasn't asked to do that. And he actually had a few games where he did have to play more because Terrence Ferguson was injured for a stretch of time. Behind him, they add Louisville transfer Jamari Johnson. He's a bigger player, and he's probably going to have to play because of that. Only 176 snaps last year. I think maybe you do see some Roger Saliapaga, the 4-star from last year's class. He's smaller, though, 235, so maybe he's going to have to put on more weight. I'm not sure. Johnson is 265. So kind of if you want someone in that blocking mold to complement Sadiq, it's probably Jamari Johnson. Also have a 4-star freshman in Vander Plug coming onto the team. Tight end should be a position of strength. I think receiver is still going to be a position of strength compared to most of the country. It's just when you actually start talking about like playoff teams, these top 12 teams, they might trail a little bit. Offensive line. You lose 4 of your starters. The only player you return is your center, Iapani Laulu. He's an elite pass blocker, only allowed 10 pressures all year. Laulu, he has 2 years of starting experience. So center is a good place to begin. You have the anchor, the leader of your unit. That's a solid place to begin. Love that you return that. From there, there's a lot of questions. Left tackle, they bring in Nevada transfer and 3-year starter Isaiah World. He's a monster of a human being, 6'8", 309 pounds. Strong pass blocking numbers. He's improved every year he started. He actually was horrible in 2022, average in 2023. And last year, we saw the best play from him. Run blocking much better, only allowed 15 pressures on the blind side. Big jump in competition from Nevada to Oregon, but World at least gives you a lot of experience. Left guard, they added USC and Wyoming transfer Emmanuel Pregnon. He started 1 season with Wyoming before coming over to USC and starting the last 2 years there at left guard. Basically, he was a little above average across the board, allowed 18 QB pressures, pretty good run blocking numbers. Playing in the same conference now shouldn't be a huge step up for Pregnon. We've seen above average play for him. I think this is pretty locked in. Right guard is a question. I think it could be Dave Iuli, the former 4-star recruit, but he's only played 372 snaps in 3 years. But fortunately, they have other options. Indiana transfer Matthew Bedford was injured all of last year, but he's actually been either starting or injured every year he's been in college. That goes back to 2019. He started for Indiana in 2023, and he's played just an insane amount of snaps over his career. 4 years of starting experience, gets the extra year because of injuries. In 2023, he only allowed 11 QB pressures. So Iuli or Bedford could play this guard position. And then at right tackle, they have Texas State transfer Alex Harkey. He should get a long look. He was originally with Colorado in 2022, transfers down to the G5, finally gets to start last year and only allowed 12 QB pressures. If any of these people fail, you have a lot of experience coming back. Kavika Rogers and Charlie Pickard both played over 200 snaps last year. 4 stars, Fox Crater still on the roster. Janoris Wilson, incoming 4 stars, Douglas Utu, alike Kalanavu, Zaire Addison, Zach Stokowski, Devin Brooks. A lot of good young players, which they kind of needed considering they lost 4 starters. This unit, to me, is a little dependent on lower level transfers like Harkey and World, but they absolutely have the talent for another strong season if they can put it together. And that's kind of the story of Oregon for this season. They have to put a lot together because they lost a lot. Off the edge, turning to the defense, this is a surprisingly deep unit considering they lost Jordan Burch to the NFL, but they still return a pair of absolute monsters in Tatum Tuioti and Mateo Uagalele. Both were elite pass rushers. Tatum Tuioti, he had 34 QB pressures. Uagalele had 31. Both were above average against the run, especially Tuioti. He was at 58 tackles for an edge defender, is very good. So this particular unit, extremely strong up front, 2 elite recruits, strong production already. Not much experience behind them, but a lot of good talent. 4 stars, Elijah Rushing and Blake Purchase saw the field sort of in a rotational relief role last year. Incoming 4-star, Toby Hostrup is on the team. This unit doesn't have as much depth when you just look at how they label their positions, but I think they could potentially move over a defensive tackle. We'll get there in just a moment. They have a lot of players that are sort of tweeners, if you will, that could play on the edge if necessary. So we'll get there right now. This unit maybe not quite as strong up top without Derek Harmon and Jamari Caldwell leaving. So they basically are returning 298 snaps from Amari Washington, who was interestingly a little better as an interior pass rusher compared to what he offered in run defense. But they bring in Bear Alexander. I'm not sure what we're going to get for him. He's the USC transfer, previously with Georgia, played in 4 games last year, got beat out by Gavin Meyer and Nate Clifton. Those are some low-level transfers from like Wyoming and Vanderbilt. He did play a lot more in 2023, 660 snaps there, 32 pressures, but his rate stats never came in far above average. So I'm just not sure what you're getting with Bear Alexander. Obviously, the character concerns are there. So you have 2 decent options up top and a couple of former 4-stars are on this team. I mean, a lot of them have played a handful of snaps here and there. Terrence Green, 36 snaps. Aiden Breland, 17. Tion Gray, 23. Ashton Porter, 26. Davian Sims, 3. Jericho Johnson, 6. Incoming player Matthew Johnson. So there's a lot of very young talents on this team. On the inside, some of that could maybe kick to the edge. Just unproven, like most units on this team outside of edge. One unit that is not unproven is linebacker. Even losing Jeffrey Bassa, they have elite production from Bryce Betcher back. Devon Jackson returns as well. Betcher was the top defender on this team last year. 94 tackles that led the team, 4 PBUs, and interception. He was good in coverage. This is an elite place to start, the general of your defense. Devon Jackson was very good as well, 47 tackles on 414 snaps. This is a very good place to start. Not much behind them. Jerry Mixon does return 43 snaps. But this is another position Oregon's recruited well. 4-star backers, Braden Platt, Dylan Williams, Kamar Muthudi, Gavin Nix, Nasir White are all on the team. Linebacker should not be a question. And defense overall is not the biggest question. If you were to make me pick one out of all these units, it is defensive back. Lose their top 8, highlighted by Jabbar Muhammad, Nico Reed. They hit the portal, at least in a couple spots. At corner, they bring in Theron Johnson from Northwestern and Jaden Kennedy from Ole Miss. Johnson's a little bit better and probably close to a lock to start. He started the last 2 years with Northwestern, above average in both years. Last year, 8 PBUs, only a 57% completion in his coverage. Those are good marks in the Big Ten. Should be fine moving out west. Kennedy, he originally started 2 years at Tulane before moving to Ole Miss. He was very good at Tulane and then posted just above average numbers in coverage with Ole Miss. Saw his snaps drop. It's kind of what happens when you jump to the SEC. But he's at least an option. There's a lot of in-house replacements as there are at most positions. Ife Obadegwu has been flashing this spring. Huge player to mention, former four-star. Dalen Austin's also been playing a bit, former four-star. He had 70 snaps last year. A lot of highly recruited corners. There's a five-star Daima Offord, four-star Sion Laule, Brandon Finney, Dorian Brew, Dakota Fields. Having options like this is not a bad thing. Safety, they go and add Purdue transfer Dylan Thieneman. He started the last 2 years with Purdue, elite in bowl seasons, probably the top safety in the portal in this class. Amazing 2023 season, took the slightest step back last year, but just very slight, over 100 tackles in both years, 7 PBUs, 6 INTs, phenomenal place to start. Admittedly, I'm not sure who the second safety is. I think it might be Kingston Lopa, who saw his role grow at the end of 2024. He was a four-star freshman last year, played a decent amount against Penn State, had to cover some Tyler Warren, which didn't go that well, but elite recruit. Hopefully more development helps him. Also have Aaron Flowers and Peyton Woodyard. They're 4 stars from last year's class. Plus, they have an incoming 5-star Trey McNutt who could probably play in a pinch. So like most of the team, it's unproven, but there's elite recruits or transfers across the board. Special teams, pretty good unit last year. They do return their kicker, Atticus Sappington, 90th most efficient kicker. But we cut this off at 10 attempts, but Oregon was so efficient that he only attempted 16 field goals all year. He did miss 2 extra points and he missed 2 field goals, but both misses were beyond 40 yards. Again, it's just a smaller sample because Oregon was so good. Having back Sappington, I think, is solid for this team. And that does it for the roster. Let's check and see what Oregon is facing schedule-wise this year as they move to year 2 in the Big Ten. So we've got Montana to kick things off in the FCS, Oklahoma State, who has been down a little bit. They travel to Northwestern, a weaker Big Ten team, followed by their final non-con, Oregon State. So you've got a nice 4-game runway where hypothetically you should be able to break in Dante Moore and a lot of these younger players before you have to travel to Penn State, the hardest game on your schedule, followed by a bye, then Indiana at Rutgers, Wisconsin at Iowa, Minnesota, USC. So the schedule is relatively easy by Big Ten standards. You do not play Michigan. You do not play Ohio State. Toughest games by far, unfortunately, they're on the road. You have to go to Penn State and you have to go to Iowa. From there, the rest is manageable. The next most difficult opponents are probably some combination of Indiana, USC, Minnesota. You get all those at home. Get Wisconsin at home. You have to travel to Washington, which is a very easy road trip for you comparatively, considering the other road trips you could make. The weirdest one is this Rutgers game. They are going literally across the country. Rutgers, I'm not expecting to be quite as good as last year, but it's still, when you combine the travel, and that's a weird schedule. Overall win projection for Oregon should be something in the 9 to 11 range. I don't think they go undefeated, especially with Penn State up this year. But they should be looking at a playoff berth, at least in contention, even with all the turnover, because they just played an easier schedule by Big Ten standards this year. But that'll do it for us. Let me know what you guys like about the video, what you don't like. We'd love feedback. But we'll be back again soon, talking more teams, more SEC teams coming up. But until then, thank you for watching. We'll see you later.